Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. My guest today is someone who wears many hats and wears them all with purpose. Carlos Medina is a business leader, advocate, and storyteller. He's the executive producer and host of Pasa, ONNJ, a show dedicated to amplifying the voices and stories of Hispanic Americans in the tri-state area. Thank you so much for being here today, Carlos.
Thank you for having me, Ivy.
So when I say you wear many hats, that is a very true fact, and I didn't even mention your law degree from Rutgers in that list. But let's start at the beginning, because you grew up in New Jersey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was it in Gothenburg?
Yep, Hudson County boy, born and raised.
Which I actually learned is one of the most densely populated municipalities in the world.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that. So talk to me about growing up there. What was growing up there like?
I enjoyed it. I mean, Gothenburg was a tiny little, like 3-block community within North Bergen, to our north and West New York. So we kind of got bullied a little by the bigger towns, but it was fun. It was fun. It was very diverse. Taught me a lot of grit. Taught me, toughened me up a little. It wasn't easy, but I think it was a valuable experience. I sometimes worry about the younger generation, like my daughter who's 22, not having that same struggle, how that will impact their careers moving forward, because I lean on that struggle so often in life. So it's been a very valuable experience for me growing up in that area, and also creating relationships and networks. Like there's that old Jersey adage, I know a guy. And that's kind of what I do today at the chamber. I'm just connecting dots. If I know somebody has a professional skill or service or product, and I meet people that could possibly want to use that service or product, I just connect them. That's what I feel like I spend all day just connecting people together to do good things.
Yeah, and you're so good at that. But I read somewhere, talk about Jersey grit. When you were 5 years old, you got on a New Jersey Transit bus and you said, "Take me to Hollywood." What was the plan there, Carlos? What were you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness, you're talking, what year was that? Like in the early 70s. So the bus driver literally stopped the bus and brought me home, which is unheard of today. But yeah, I always was interested in TV. I was always, with my bowl of cereal, squat in front of the TV, watching programming.
It seems like it paid off. So you mentioned the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. You are the president and CEO. You grew up. Your dad was Cuban. Your mom was Puerto Rican. What is that? What was that like growing up with that culture and surrounded by that culture in Hudson County?
I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, I went to St. Joe's High School. I want to say we were probably 50% Cuban, some Puerto Rican. And I remember whenever I'd meet like a Cuban family, I'd say, "Hey, my dad's from Cuba, my mom's Puerto Rican." Right away, they're kind of hooking on to the Cuban side. "Oh, tú eres cubano, you're Cuban." I was like, "All right." But it was super. I really enjoyed growing up with the two cultures. There's a famous poem that says Cuba and Puerto Rico are just two wings on the same beautiful bird. So they're very similar cultures from the Caribbean. I enjoy being 50-50. I feel like it gives me a little bit of both cultures. Cubans could be a little bit more aggressive, and Puerto Ricans, at least in my experience, are more humble and down to earth. If I make a couple stereotypes. So I like having the blend of both. I feel like it's come in handy in my career, in my life.
And I've heard you ask this on your show, so I'm going to ask you a similar question.
Yeah.
What dish feels like home to you? Do you have a favorite dish?
I like, rice and beans. So I would like, black beans, maybe, depending if I'm feeling healthy or not. So it might be a steak with onions. Palomilla is the steak that a lot of Cuban Americans, and then I grew up in Hudson County, or churrasco steak also. So probably rice, beans, some yuca on the plate. Yeah, that would be a good meal. That would be a good plate for me.
All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. I mentioned you graduated from Rutgers. You also have a law degree from Rutgers. You build a successful business. You're serving on several boards. At what point do you say, I want to start a show that highlights voices that need to be highlighted, need to be amplified.
I probably met with John Servideo, who was the general manager at NJPBS for 3 years in a row, and he always said, "Just do it, Carlos." I don't know if you know John, but he was very down to earth, very blunt.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "I'll have the coffee with you, but just do it. I know you. I've seen you on TV. Just do it." So, ironically, another group came to me, Willie Sanchez, who had a show that won an Emmy called Images Imágenes, and he asked me to help relaunch it. So at that point, I kind of gave my entire notebook of ideas to the
Mm-hmm.
team. And we did 2 episodes, so we did relaunch. I was able to interview Gloria and Emilio Estefan and Zoe Zaldana for episode 1, so it was a pretty blockbuster first episode. And then, since it was within Rutgers, it kind of just didn't get funding and a lot of moving pieces. So then I just decided to launch Get Pasa and just do it like Servideo said and stop stalling.
But what gave you the idea to do that in the first place?
I always felt that I didn't see enough representation of myself and other Hispanic role models
Mm.
on TV, unfortunately. Even growing up, when I said I would sit in front of the TV, maybe Sesame Street had Maria and some diverse characters, but not a lot of diversity. So I feel like, as like you said, I'm wearing a lot of hats. When I'm wearing my chamber hat and I'm talking to young people, that seems to have always been a comment that they would make, very casually, of not seeing representation or people doing things that they either thought they couldn't achieve. So, like one of the first episodes, I had Carlos Rodriguez, who was the CEO of ADP, major top 50 CEO in the country. So I think just people seeing that, knowing they could reach those levels, they could make it on Broadway and Hollywood and sports and business or government, whatever it might be. But I think it's important just to show the diversity of the Hispanic community in the tri-state area and their allies. I've had non-Hispanic individuals on, Mayor Fulop, Mayor Ross Baraka,
Mm-hmm.
college presidents, things of that nature. Just people that are allies that believe in working together and driving success and driving the economy collaboratively.
And the interviews on your show, I have to say, when I was starting this show, I spent many years behind the camera and then, left journalism to do some consulting work. But when I decided to do this show, your tone was something that I appreciated very much, and because it's very conversational and it's very authentic. And so to me, that says you must have always had this natural curiosity to learn about people. Is that true? Did you always see
Oh
yourself
yeah, I
as
love
someone who's a
talking to
storyteller?
people. My dad is famous for being a great talker and storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
He worked 38 years at the New York Times, so he has so many, great stories that he would share. So I inherited some of that, but I love people. I love getting to know people. I've always gravitated to that. So even if I was in-house attorney at a big engineering firm, I would gravitate towards business development, people running projects, not necessarily just being in a courtroom and reviewing contracts and all that boring stuff that attorneys do. So I gravitated more to things that were people focused, or I could, sit down, have a coffee with somebody, collaborate on a project, and do good things together. That collaborative experiment and is very fun to me and exciting to work on new exciting projects with people that look at it from different perspectives and bring different skill sets to the table. So I enjoy that process.
And you mentioned your dad. I think I was so fascinated to learn about him. He worked at the New York Times, as you mentioned, in the clipping department, and then worked his way up to head the Hispanic Association at the paper. And it was part of his mission to make sure that more Hispanic reporters were hired so that there was better representation at the paper. That is quite a legacy and something that has had and still does have a profound impact on a major, national institution.
Yeah, and we lost Dad earlier this year, so I've been going through a lot of his letters because he was really a pack rat. Like I have letters from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and it's fascinating. I want to one day do a documentary on his life, and maybe I have found the the theme, these letters, because I see letters that he wrote, like if the Cuban national baseball team came to play in the United States and a sport reporter used a couple words. They were very minor, but he might have said the aggressive Cuban ball players or they lack respect. There was something, and he wrote like a really terse letter to the reporter. And the reporter sent a long explanation back, apologizing, but also explaining what he meant and that Dad might have been taking it the wrong way. But I mean, I found letters from Cesar Chavez. He was helping him raise money for the Farm Workers Union. Al Sharpton, who he helped with a research project when nobody knew who Al Sharpton was and nobody wanted to give him any help. And Dad assigned a couple of his managers to get him all the research that he needed for the project or the book that he was working on. So he touched so many people's lives. Geraldo Rivera, if a dignitary from Latin America came, they gave him the credit card, and Dad was entertaining presidents. Ruben Blades, I have pictures of him and Ruben Blades, president of Nicaragua, president from other Latin American countries. One disappointment is I tried to get his obituary published in the New York Times, a place that he gave so much to, and it passed through a couple of reporters and people, and it didn't really go anywhere. So probably on my next episode that airs for Father's Day, I'll be talking a little bit about that and my disappointment. I was surprised. He worked on the Holocaust Museum, so there's letters from the Holocaust Museum. There's letters from the Kennedy family because he did a lot with the Kennedy family. So really a person that did so much. Like you said, he started the Hispanic Society to help others. He had a cooking club. He would do the annual Christmas party at the New York Times. And I found an article when they stopped doing it. And another paper, I think the title was Bah Humbug. Bob Medina's famous Christmas party has been canceled this year. So it's kind of cool to see the various pieces of content that have been sitting in briefcases for 40, 50 years. It's amazing because, it just brings those stories back to life. I start remembering even when he would come home from the office after a long day and talk about all the struggles and all the things that he had to do on the particular day, and then all the cool people he met. He met Marilyn Monroe, and at the time she was married to Arthur Miller, so he was pulling up photographs that she had never seen, and that was part of the reason for their visit, was to see some of the unpublished photos. So I thought he had a great career and always giving. So anything I do today is really, I'm always have him on my shoulder telling me, give back, Carlos. You've had a lot given to you. You have to, it's your responsibility to pay it forward. So I don't even feel like it's a choice. I just always have Dad in my ear telling me, Carlos, do the right thing.
When you were a young boy and you were growing up, did you realize the greatness that your dad was doing?
Some of it. I mean, all my friends loved my dad because he was, one of the articles somebody wrote, they said he was Google before Google, and it's true. 38 years he read the New York Times from cover to cover, and also read a lot of the research that the articles were based on. So if somebody was writing an article, not only did he read it, but he might have been in that process of, hey, I need this from this part of the world. Okay, I'll get you that. So he knows how the story developed. He worked even on films. There was a movie called Men of Bronze, which celebrated African-American soldiers from the First World War. A friend of his, William Miles. So I found a lot of letters from, Bill thanking my dad for working on the project and getting him photographs and getting him permission to use a lot of footage and film from the New York Times archives. So it's just, he was just always helping folks, always helping, not looking for anything in return, I would say. But he had a good network, he had a very good network of friends and allies.
And you're fortunate because he got to see your success. What did he think of the show and your role at the chamber?
All of us, all the three siblings, definitely.
Oh, that's great. Was he a fan of the show? I'm sure he was a big fan of the show.
Yeah. He saw some of the show, and then I was on a show on Univision during COVID called Amigos de Univision. With his Alzheimer, he would watch it, and even a couple times I was able to put his photo on screen. Aww. Like one of the times that he wasn't feeling well, I shouted out like, "Hey," in Spanish, "Feel better, Dad," to him and Mom at the time. So he really enjoyed that. But at the end, he was losing with the Alzheimer's. He wasn't exactly recognizing us or able to communicate as well. I almost feel like I've gotten. I'm not a very religious or spiritual person, but I feel like after he passed, I almost feel like messages from him that maybe
Mm,
he's been storing for 5 years,
wow.
frustrated that he couldn't communicate them.
Wow.
But lately, I've been like I said, even some of my business dealings, I've been more open-minded, for lack of a better phrase. Like, um, not as hard a negotiator, more like, well, let's help these people out. I know they maybe didn't do the right thing, but in the past, I'd be a little more grumpy. They didn't
Yeah.
do the right thing. They don't deserve,
Yeah.
us to support them with a grant. And then I just feel like some vibe of dad saying like, "Hey, don't be so hard on everybody. Take it easy. You're doing a good job, but don't get grumpy."
You
So
said it's your dad's on your shoulder.
I've actually the last month or so I've been I feel like I've turned a new leaf over.
Mm,
Ironically, after dad passed, yeah. Yeah.
I love to hear that. We're going to take a very short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little more about the show and about the chamber and all sorts of good things. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Carlos, we're talking about Pasa ONNJ, the show that you do on PBS, and it's interesting to me because I feel like we have so many places now to consume content, and so many people creating content, and yet it seems, at least sometimes, that you still have to search for meaningful content sometimes, and the content that's amplifying voices that don't always get heard. Why do you think that is?
It's been a struggle with media and even placement of my show. I feel like, when I'm wearing my chamber hat and I'm being, if I'm somewhere on stage talking with other sponsors and talking to business leaders, one of my stump speeches is, as Hispanics, we contribute so much to the economy, especially here in New Jersey. I just want to have some sort of numbers that match our contribution.
Mm,
So if we're 20% of the population, I'd love for us to be 20% of board of directors, 20% of C-suite, 20% of a company's procurement, and 20% of the stories, which we're sadly very behind on. If I look at any TV station,
yeah.
if there's 1% diverse programming, that's probably a lot. So it's a struggle to get those diverse stories out there. Um, I see progress, little steps, and it's one of the questions I ask guests. And one of the common theme, and it doesn't always make it on camera, but a lot of the guests that I'm talking, people that have won awards on Broadway and actors, their advice is today we have to start creating our own content and our
Mm-hmm.
own projects because the way we consume content, like you said, is so different. So it's not like it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. The industry's rapidly changing. So I'm always talking to folks about even this content. I appear on PBS 9 episodes, but I have people like, I'd love to hear things weekly. Would you consider a podcast? Would you consider more content? So I'm working on that to try to get more content out there. But the state of the industry could improve. I really
Yeah.
would love to see more deeper dives into diverse storytelling. It seems like you just get the same, recycled content over and over. I want to hear Jersey stories. I want to hear New York stories. Not necessarily BBC doesn't excite me. So it's like, let's put things that are relevant to, the people here, especially when it's taxpayers that might be funding, some of the media. They should cover the taxpayers that are paying them. Should be the focus of the network or the media group that's
Yeah.
organizing the channel or the newspaper or the magazine or whatever it might be, the content.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it better reflect us Jersey folks, us New York folks.
What do you think the mainstream media is missing about the Hispanic community? What aren't they getting?
One thing they're missing is the GDP, which is fascinating. New Jersey's Hispanic GDP is 100 billion annually, and yet
Wow.
I remember talking. I won't mention. It was a Hispanic station, so there's two, Telemundo or Univision, but they were talking to a supermarket chain, and they were trying to get them to advertise. and they shared with me that the supermarket chain said something like, "Oh, our shoppers don't buy black beans" or something like that, which very much insulted the producer from the Spanish network and insulted me when I heard it. But I think that's still a perception out there, which is shocking. Like, real estate is booming with the Hispanic market. There's an organization I've had on the show, National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, NAREP. I mean, that group is so powerful and growing nationally because Hispanics are buying houses at a crazy pace. Our education, we continue to increase college graduates and things of that nature. So Hispanics are driving the economy at the end of the day. Not
Yeah.
everybody wants to hear that. Not everybody's open to that message, but it's a reality. It's fact.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when people just say things without backup, every year now, an organization called the Latino Donor Collaborative, with the help of some banks like Bank of America and others, fund the study, which shows what the GDP is. It shows what the real estate market is, education, and Hispanics are growing and contributing. In 2009, when we had a huge recession, mainstream organizations and companies were shuttering, closing up, and Hispanic businesses were growing 20, 30%, which many would argue that that last Great Recession, the Hispanic business community saved the United States economy.
Mm.
Nobody talks about that, but it's a fact. It's, the facts and figures are out there. You come to some of the chamber events, the energy's there, you just feel it. So even when the president talks about economic growth is at places like our group, the Hispanic Chamber. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We bring in people from any ethnicity, any gender. We do training classes. We have veterans, we have women, we have Asian, we have African American, we have everybody. Everybody's welcome at our table to learn and grow together. But we'd like to see an improvement on those numbers.
And speaking of the chamber, you use the chamber uses the hashtag Familia. You have a blog called Familia. Talk to me about why Familia is so important to you as a through line here.
Yeah, just as the chamber started its regrowth after our founder became ill and we kind of had some rough years. That was the only way to explain it, because even me personally, I was calling folks I hadn't spoken to since high school, and I was like, I'm in this chamber, we're in a crisis, you're my friend, can you help me? I don't have money to pay you. And so many people stepped up and helped the organization. They realized it was a valuable organization they didn't want to see go bankrupt. So that familia vibe, that familia mentality, that word just perfectly encompasses that feeling, that vibe. It's one of those things, it's hard to put a word on it because it's just like a positive energy that's in the room when we have events. Just people supporting each other. It's so much needed, especially after COVID and our political climate where we're all getting agitated. It's nice just to be in a room where, people have your back, they're supporting you. You could stand up and say something silly or stutter on stage. We don't care. You're our family. We're not going to laugh at you. We're going to support you.
I love that.
And that the only way we, figured out how to somehow describe that was familia was the closest word that we think described all of that.
Carlos, if people want to get in touch, they want to learn more about the show or the chamber, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you or find out more?
You could go to www.quepasatv.org, and from there there'll be different links. info@quepasatv.org if they want to send us a message, show ideas. We get a decent amount, thankfully, of show ideas and people that want to be on the show. But anybody that wants to reach out, I'd love to hear from viewers that watch the show.
We end each of these shows with something we call 3 big little questions. We do it rapid fire. You ready?
Okay.
All right. How do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
That's tough because
are you ever in a bad mood?
Earlier, I do get grumpy with folks.
Okay.
Just resetting, almost not a true meditation, but just sitting down and breathing. I like to breathe a lot, or go to the gym and exercise. But yeah, exercise, breathing.
And what is your go-to karaoke song?
Karaoke song. I don't know if I've ever even done a karaoke. I'm embarrassed to say I maybe did one. So I'll say "Living on a Prayer" probably is a good one. I like
Love
Bon
that.
Jovi.
Love it. And what's one of your favorite spots in New Jersey?
spots.
Yeah, favorite place, favorite anything, favorite place to go to in New Jersey. It could be a restaurant, a
Yeah,
park.
I like Son Cubano.
I
My
love that
friend
place.
Alex Duran is one of the owners.
Hmm.
I like it. It has beautiful views. Talk about vibes, like you can't beat the vibe there. That's like an
Yeah,
elegant, sexy vibe that's always there, and the
yeah.
food is good.
And
So yeah, I like
the
Son
best
Cubano.
coffee I've ever had is at San Cubano, I think.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good to know. That's good
Yes.
to know.
Yes. Carlos, thank you so much for spending time and taking the time to talk to me today. I appreciate it. Appreciate all of the great work you're doing. Thank you for inspiring me to do this show too. So I appreciate it. And I hope I talk to you again very soon.
Great. Thanks, Ivy.
Thank you. And that'll do it for this week's Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmitz. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Stories Show. I'll see you next time.